a lot of white powder around him as well that seems to be sort of giving off gas of some description. It smells a bit bleachy.
To understand how a life ends this brutally, we have to watch how the day began. Thursday, November 24th, 2022. It was the beginning of the World Cup, and the streets of Wigan were quiet. For most people on Kilburn Drive, the day began with the usual rhythm of suburban life. The sun came up behind a layer of clouds. Porch lights flickered off. Kettles were boiled. Curtains were drawn back. It is a quiet street. A place where neighbours know each other by sight, if not by name. But on this particular Friday, the rhythm was off. Because shortly after 6 a.m, a vehicle turned into the estate that didn't belong there. It was a Mitsubishi Shogun. Dark. Heavy. It moved slowly down the street, past the manicured lawns and the parked family cars, before pulling up near the end of the cul-de-sac. The driver didn't enter a house. He didn't check a map. He simply killed the engine and sat back. Inside the house, just a few doors away, 38-year-old Liam Smith was waking up. Liam was a local lad, a sparky, an electrician by trade. He was a father of 2 boys, the captain of the Shevington Sharks football team, and a man who was, by all accounts, the life and soul of his circle. Liam had no reason to look out of his window and worry about a parked car. He had no debts. He had no feuds. He wasn't involved in the criminal underworld. He was just a man getting ready for a day's work. He said goodbye to his family, grabbed his keys, and walked out to his van. He drove right past the Mitsubishi Shogun as he left the street. He didn't know it, but the man inside that car was watching him leave, and more terrifyingly, he was prepared to wait for him to come back. Time is a strange thing in a police investigation. Usually, everything happens fast. But in this case, the horror lies in the stillness. For 10 hours, the driver sat in that car. He sat there through the morning. He sat there as the postman did his rounds. He sat there as the school run happened in the afternoon. 10 hours of stewing. On the seat next to him sat a self-loading pistol and a canister of sulfuric acid. He wasn't just waiting, he was rehearsing. By early evening, the weather had turned. A heavy, relentless rain began to hammer down on Wigan. It washed the streets clean, sending water running into the gutters. At 6:40 p.m, the headlights of Liam's silver van swept across the wet road. He was turning back into Kilburn Drive. Liam parked on his driveway. He gathered his things. He stepped out of the van, likely thinking about dinner, or the weekend, or the football. Across the street, the door of the Mitsubishi opened. He didn't say a word. There was no warning, no demand for money. Just a single, sharp crack that echoed off the brickwork of the neighbouring houses. The bullet struck Liam in the face. He fell instantly. For most killers, that would be enough. The target is down. The job is done. You run. But he wasn't finished. This wasn't just a murder. It was an act of desecration. He stood over Liam's body and poured the sulfuric acid over him. It was a medieval act in a modern suburb. A final, spiteful attempt to erase the man he had just killed. And then, just as quickly as the violence had started, it stopped. When Greater Manchester Police arrived, the scene was chaotic. The rain was washing away evidence. The nature of the injuries was confusing. Detective Chief Inspector Gina Brennand, leading the investigation, was faced with a puzzle. A gun and acid. That is the signature of organised crime. That is a cartel hit. That is a warning to others.
This was a proper whodunit from the start, where I had a victim that we knew nothing about, no witnesses, no suspect, no weapon, no motive, and very little evidence to go on. We knew the build-up in that we knew the movements of the vehicle, we knew the obtaining of licence plates, and we knew how Liam had been killed, but we didn't know who'd done it.
4 weeks before Christmas, in the early evening of Thursday, 24th of November 2022, Liam Smith, a 38-year-old man, was at home alone. On one of the very rare occasions, he wasn't with his children. 2 boys, aged 15 and 11, upon whom he loved unconditionally. Just after 6:30, Liam was murdered at the bottom of his driveway. Not only was Liam a devoted father, but he was also a dearly loved son, brother, uncle, cousin, grandson and friend. Liam's murder at his home address has sent complete shockwaves of grief and despair amongst everyone who knew and loved him. 2 young boys will now have to spend the rest of their lives without their adoring father. And the rest of our family will also be forever haunted by this senseless act of murder.
They looked into his bank accounts. They checked his phone records. They spoke to his friends. They were looking for the secret life that would explain this level of brutality. They found nothing. Liam Smith was exactly who he appeared to be. A hard-working dad, a popular guy. The detectives realized with a sinking feeling that this wasn't a professional hit. It was personal. And to find the killer, they wouldn't need to look at criminal gangs. They would need to look at Liam's romantic past. Despite the false number plates used, police were able to track the Mitsubishi Shogun. They traced it painstakingly, camera by camera, mile by mile, all the way back to Sheffield. Specifically, to the driveway of a man named Michael Hillier. Hillier was a known character, heavily involved in the drug trade, intense, volatile, but he had no connection to Liam Smith. They had never met. They had no mutual friends. Why would a drug dealer from Sheffield drive an hour to Wigan to execute an electrician? The answer lay in who Hillier was dating. Rachel Fulstow, 37 years old, a digital marketing manager from York. Detectives looked at the connection and found a single, fragile thread. 3 years earlier, in 2019, Liam Smith had matched with Rachel on Tinder. They had met up for a date in York. They had spent the night together. For Liam, it was a brief fling. The spark wasn't really there, and he politely moved on. He went back to his life in Wigan and likely never gave it a second thought. But for Rachel Fulstow, that night didn't end. It festered. Over the next 3 years, Rachel rewrote the history of that night. She began to tell people that the encounter had been non-consensual. It was a serious allegation, one she never reported to the police, never mentioned to friends at the time, and one that Liam would never get the chance to defend himself against. When she met Michael Hillier, she found the perfect vessel for her rage. Hillier was a man who wanted to be a protector. He wanted to be the knight in shining armor. Rachel fed him a story of a villain who had wronged her, and Hillier decided he would be the hero who exacted revenge. Together, they stopped being a couple and became co-conspirators in a murder plot. When police arrested Hillier, the trail inevitably led to Rachel. In the interview room, she put on the performance of a lifetime. She portrayed herself as the terrified girlfriend of a drug-crazed maniac. She told detectives she was scared of Michael. She said she had no idea he was going to kill Liam. She claimed she was a victim of coercive control, trapped in a relationship she couldn't escape. It was a convincing story. But in the digital age, You cannot hide your footprints. When forensic experts unlocked her phone, the terrified girlfriend defense crumbled. In the days leading up to the murder, she hadn't been searching for domestic abuse helplines. She had been searching for the weather in Wigan, checking if the rain would wash away forensics. She had been searching for how to wash blood out of clothes. She had been searching for how long does it take for acid to corrode metal. But the most chilling piece of evidence wasn't a search term. It was a plane ticket. Just days after the murder, days after Michael burned his clothes, the couple went to the airport. They flew to Jamaica for a 2-week holiday. While Liam's family was choosing a coffin and trying to explain to his children why their dad wasn't coming home, Rachel and Michael were posting selfies, drinking rum punch in the sun. They didn't look terrified. They looked triumphant. They believed they had committed the perfect crime. They believed that by deleting their search history, they had deleted the truth. When the case reached trial, the loyalty between the Bonnie and Clyde of the suburbs evaporated. It was a cutthroat defense. Michael Hillier admitted the killing, but claimed he was a pawn, that Rachel was the mastermind who manipulated him into doing it. Rachel stuck to her story that she was too scared to stop him. The jury at Manchester Crown Court didn't buy either version. They saw the truth. They were partners. They fed off each other. They planned it together, they executed it together, and they covered it up together. Michael Hillier was sentenced to life with a minimum of 33 years. Rachel Fulstow was sentenced to life with a minimum of 30 years.